So let's just jump right in this week, taking off a bit from last week when we talked about seeking cooperation. And yet, often when we don't receive that cooperation, we feel powerless. We get enraged. Our energy gets really, really, really hot. And then we often move into strategies that are actually seeking compliance over cooperation. So this week, we are going to talk a little bit about the energetics of that rage. Now, I know you know this. I know this. When rage comes up in your body, it is hot, right? It is hot and spicy and intense. And it's often really, really hard to contain that rage, to work with it, and not project it out on your children. The reason we project it out on our children, because when they don't cooperate or they don't do what we think they need to do, then we have this like a little switch that goes on in our brain, and it is a very, very young switch. But we all of a sudden believe that our child is an emotional threat. They're out to get us. Because if they loved us, they would cooperate, right? I mean, we have a desire, and if they really loved us, think about being a little kid here, and you put that desire out, you would think that the other person would want to meet that desire, would want to fill that hunger inside of you. And yet, a lot of times that didn't happen because our parents saw us as, greedy and entitled and demanding. And so, of course, that triggered a lot of stuff inside of them. So often when we had these big desires and we would express them, boom, we would hit this wall. We would hit this intense wall inside our parents of resistance. And then our energy of desire got really bottled up. You can imagine that energy is going out. It wants to get filled, but then it hits a wall. It gets thrown back into the child, you. And then that energy goes down and it gets unresolved. It starts to kind of move around inside. And you organize your life not to go toward that energy because you get in big trouble when you do. And so it's kind of hidden away deep down. I call it hide and seek. You don't even know it's there until you ask your child to do something and they say no. Right? And then all of a sudden, well, maybe not all of a sudden, maybe you ask them 2 or 3 times, and then they roll their eyes, they slam that door, they throw a fit, and that intensity comes bounding into you. I call it the hot potato. You get that hot potato, and it activates this intensity, which we call rage. And it is nothing like it. I know you know this. It is so intense to feel that rage in the face of your 4-year-old, right? Or your 12-year-old or your 16-year-old. And that fire comes up, and before you know it, because that rage can be so hot, especially if you don't know how to work with it inside yourself, it can be so hot, just like when you were a kid, you just want to get rid of it. And so next thing you know, you're screaming, you're yelling at your kid. Or like me, I was running out of the room, screaming like a banshee, running as far as I could away from my daughter and her desires and all that she was expressing in the mirror that she was showing me. It was so incredibly hard, but that rage was still there. So the energetics of rage, which we want to talk about, is there. It's very, very, very hot energy. And as children, it is really hard to contain that hot fire. So, of course, we're blasting it out all the time. We're shooting it at our parents in hopes that they'll know how to work with that. They'll know how to help us gather that fire and make it a warm, beautiful fire. But usually that doesn't happen. It activates their fire. And if that happens for you and you experience that rage, take heart, because that rage is your life force. What has to happen, though, is you learn how to work with that rage, to contain it, not to repress it or act it out, but to contain it, just like we contain a fire. So we get the warmth from it. We get the goodness. If the fire gets out of control, it's dangerous. if it gets too much water put on it, it doesn't offer any of the heat or the warmth that we're seeking. So in Pure Joy, we're always working. We're not trying to get rid of the rage, which most people talk about. I don't want to feel this, but we're also not expressing that rage out and, burning up past all around us, especially with our children. You're probably asking, so how do I do that, right? So the best way that I found to do that was through my Safe Seat. And if you haven't downloaded a copy of the Safe Seat, go to my website, purejoyparenting.com, and you can download a free audio version of the Safe Seat. So over a 5-day period, I'll be teaching you the steps of the Safe Seat. So remember that energy when it comes up, the heat of rage, that is yours. And it can be a great awakener. As I say, I used to think it was a destroyer. It became the great awakener of my energetic charges that had been repressed, that were unresolved, that I kept acting out with my daughter. And so once I was able to see it was mine and it could be good energy, not the behavior wasn't, but the rage, the intensity could fuel me and my life and energize me. Then I got really excited about working with it. And I hope you do too. Thank you for listening to this episode of Parenting Paused. If you enjoyed the episode, do me a favor and share it with your mama friends. You can also leave a review wherever you listen, which will support getting the Pure Joy message out. Come on over to the Pure Joy Parenting Practice Facebook page or join me on Instagram to hear more. And don't forget to download your free copy of the Safe Seat course on the Pure Joy website. And while there, check out the offerings page to go deeper in the Pure Joy work.